I'm sure you're familiar with the works of Yuval Harari, and he talks a lot about various fictions that have been useful in coordinating large groups of human beings. And it sounds like you were basically writing about that using maybe different words and different concepts 25 years before Yuval Harari was writing about it. You also wrote a book, I think, The Moral Animal, which my one sentence summary of that book would be that who are we really once you strip away all the superficial crud? Like who are humans really, and why do they do what they do? Is that a fair summary of your book, The Moral Animal?
Yeah, and specifically that was when the field of evolutionary psychology was just emerging. That was published in 1994. In fact, when I started working on the book, I had never heard the term evolutionary psychology. I knew I was working on people who study how evolution shaped the human mind, but I hadn't heard the term. It came to my awareness as I was writing the book. And so, yeah, the question is why we are the way we are, and including some unfortunate ways we are. You mentioned earlier that you would watch the Trump-Clinton debates and have a very different perspective from your fathers. I know the feeling. 3 of my 4 siblings voted for Trump. And one thing you learn from thinking about how natural selection shaped the human brain is we're not necessarily designed to perceive the objective truth, okay?
Yep.
What the theory of natural selection says is that genes that give rise to traits that help the genes get into the next generation are the genes that will survive. So if genes incline us to a kind of a warped perception that helps get the genes into the next generation, then those kinds of perceptions will be favored.
Yeah.
And this explains a lot of what is sometimes called the psychology of tribalism. It also explains cognitive biases. Like the most famous is confirmation bias, where we notice and embrace information consistent with our pre-existing views. We don't notice or reject information inconsistent with it. These are not the hallmarks of a machine designed to ascertain the truth.
That's right. That's right. I'm sitting here chuckling. There's a great Buddhist anecdote that talks about you're walking in the forest and out of the corner of your eye, you see a snake and you start and you get a burst of adrenaline and it turns out it's a stick. And,
right.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. You clearly did not perceive that accurately, but you perceived it in such a way that it's been programmed to help your genes replicate across the generations. I'm also thinking about, I don't know if you've ever been on YouTube and seen these cat videos where they stick a cucumber next to a cat and the cat just goes insane. Apparently, have you seen these? They're so funny.
What does the cat think the cucumber is?
It thinks it's a snake. And so they'll put the cucumber kind of right behind the cat, and these cats they jump 10 feet in the air and spin around. It's crazy how they're programmed to react to these.
Yeah, because better safe than sorry. It's similarly like we overestimate the speed of approaching objects. Better to get out of the way too soon than too late. When we are tired, we overestimate the slope of a hill that we're looking up at if we're thinking about walking up it. The way our brain, rather than send the message, hey, you're tired, maybe it's a bad idea to start that hike, the brain just distorts your perception of how steep the thing is. There's all kinds of ways our perception is distorted.
There's another way that it's distorted, and I think that there's been a lot of study in the field of psychedelics. There's been a renaissance in the study of psychedelics, and how one of the theories is the reason psilocybin and some of these other psychedelic compounds have the effects they do is because they turn off the default mode network. And so the other evolutionary adaptation, Bob, is not only are we interpreting information in a non-objective way, but we're also not getting all the information, because if we did, we'd be totally overwhelmed constantly. Yeah. So there's a filter, not only a kind of a misinterpretation mechanism, but there's also a filtering mechanism in our brain.
Yeah, you notice this as you get older and you realize no one is looking at you. Certainly nobody younger than you. It's like, why should they? You're just not relevant.
Yeah.
You're not the mate they're looking for. You're not the friend or enemy they're looking for. You're not even the rival they're alert to. Yeah, it's super selective. And fortunately it is, but that the selectivity can be accompanied by certain kinds of unfortunate biases for sure.